Imagine you're standing, right at the edge of a forest you've lived in for 4 years. You know every tree. You know the exact rhythm of the wind through the leaves, and you know exactly who's going to be sitting on the logs beside you when the sun goes down.
Yeah, you know the whole landscape.
Exactly. And then suddenly, someone hands you a piece of heavy paper with your name printed on it, pats you on the back, and just tells you that you can never, ever go back to living in that forest again.
It's a total eviction.
Right. So how do you process that kind of eviction? Do you laugh? Do you cry? Do you try to organize a spreadsheet to manage the pain?
Oh, people definitely try the spreadsheet method.
For sure. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are talking about the architecture of goodbyes.
That's such a heavy topic.
It is, yeah. We're exploring the intense and honestly often overwhelming psychology of leaving a place that has shaped you. And we have a really fascinating stack of sources to help us unpack it today.
We really do.
Yeah, from ancient spiritual texts to early 20th century children's literature, all the way to a classic Billy Joel track. And the goal of this deep dive is to see how all these sources talk to each other about the art of leaving.
And it is the absolute perfect day for this specific conversation.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because, while we are speaking in the abstract about the architecture of goodbyes, there is a very real, very physical goodbye happening just outside our studio doors.
Literally right down the road.
Exactly. It's Saturday morning, May 16th, 2026, and today is commencement morning at Benedictine College here in Atchison, Kansas.
You can just feel it in the air.
You really can. You can literally feel the transition settling over the town. The weather itself is kind of playing along,
Oh, yeah. It's that very specific Kansas spring feeling.
Right. It's warm, it's humid, and just slightly, unsettled.
Unsettled is the perfect word for it.
Yeah, the morning clouds are kind of giving way to these periods of sunshine, and the temperatures are already climbing into the upper 80s.
It's going to be a hot one in those robes.
For sure. And with those active south winds pulling the heat up along the Missouri River, it feels unmistakably like the threshold of summer. Plus, there's this slight chance of thunderstorms tonight, which adds to that sort of electric transitional mood.
Yeah, the campus is basically holding its breath right now. And we're broadcasting this Daybreak special right into the middle of that liminal space.
Right into the heart of it.
So for you listening, if you are walking the campus right now, maybe grabbing a coffee, you know exactly what the timeline looks like today.
Oh, yeah, it's a very tight schedule.
It is. At 9 o'clock, the students begin lining up. The faculty are going to take their places right behind them in the Abbey Circle Drive.
Which is such a striking visual.
It really is. And then at 9:40, that massive, slow procession into the Nolan Gymnasium begins, leading right into the 10 o'clock ceremony.
And if you're out there, you see the parents arriving with their travel mugs and the graduates waking up early just to say these really quiet goodbyes to their dorm rooms.
Yeah, the emotional resonance of last night is definitely still lingering, too.
Oh, absolutely. The March of Light, the baccalaureate mass, the president's reception, it's all still hanging in the humid air.
But what fascinates me about all this and what we're really digging into today is why we do all of this.
What do you mean?
Well, we live in a modern world that is fiercely efficient.
Right.
If you quit a job, you just hand in your badge and drive away.
Yeah, maybe an awkward cake in the break room if you're lucky.
Right. And if you move out of an apartment, you just leave the keys on the counter and lock the door. We usually treat departures as these purely logistical problems.
Just a checklist to get through.
Exactly. So why do Catholic colleges and really ancient institutions in general insist on these incredibly slow, deliberate rituals?
Well, it's because the human brain and, frankly, the human soul doesn't process transitions efficiently.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, when we just pack a car and drive away from a significant chapter of our lives, our intellect knows we're leaving. Right? We know the date on the calendar.
Right. Logically, we get it.
But our emotional core lags thousands of miles behind. The field of embodied cognition actually tells us that we process abstract emotional concepts much better when we physically enact them.
Okay, so the ritual of graduation is actually doing psychological work?
Completely. Standing in the Abbey Circle Drive in a heavy academic robe, walking a very specific historic path alongside the people you've lived with, it provides a physical container for a massive psychological shift.
A physical container, I like that.
Yeah, it gives the sorrow and the anxiety of the unknown a place to go.
But I want to push on that a little bit, actually.
Sure.
Does it really contain the sorrow? Or does it just heighten the melodrama?
How do you mean?
I mean, think about last night. The graduates participated in the March of Light. They processed up the Raven Walk in the dark. They lit literal physical candles at a stone grotto.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful, but if I'm a senior and I'm already terrified of leaving my friends and stepping into the adult world, doesn't surrounding me with solemn music and candles just make the grief worse?
Well, no, it doesn't make it worse. It makes it legible.
Legible.
Yeah, that is a really crucial distinction. Free-floating anxiety about the future is terrifying because it has no shape.
Just a fog of panic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you light a candle and place it at a grotto, you are taking that internal chaos and giving it a definitive external form.
Oh, I see.
You're essentially telling your own nervous system, yes, this ending is real, it is monumental, but it is also sacred.
So you're honoring the ending instead of just surviving it.
Right. By ritualizing the grief of departure, you prevent it from curdling into simple panic. You transform the fear into reverence. You are literally moving your body through a landscape to force your heart to catch up to the reality of the calendar.
Moving your body to force your heart to catch up. That's a great way to put it. And that exact transformation from sorrow into something deeply meaningful is where our first source for today actually begins.
Right, the morning prayer.
Yeah, to transition from the physical commencement taking place just down the road to the spiritual themes of this whole morning, we're looking at the Chesterton Radio Morning Prayer for today.
Which features a really powerful reading.
It does. The gospel reading is from John chapter 16, verses 23b through 28. And reading through it, it's basically the ultimate template for a difficult goodbye.
It absolutely is. I mean, Christ is speaking to his disciples about his impending departure, his return to the Father.
He's dropping a massive bombshell on them.
Totally. He is preparing them for an immense absence. Think about it. They have spent years walking with him, learning his rhythms, eating with him.
They've built their whole lives around him.
They are, in a very real sense, his students. And he's telling them that the school is closing and the teacher is leaving.
Great.
But what is so astonishing about this text is the emotional pivot he makes. He doesn't just validate their grief. He tells them that their sorrow will turn into joy.
Which is a wild thing to say to people who are actively grieving.
It is. He says, ask and you shall receive, that your joy may be full.
Okay, hold on. This is where I always get tripped up with this kind of spiritual framing.
The joy part.
Yeah. He is literally abandoning them. They are about to face intense persecution. Their entire way of life is collapsing. And he is telling them to ask for full joy.
It's definitely a hard pill to swallow.
It almost sounds like, toxic positivity. How is someone supposed to navigate the space between a traumatic departure and this supposed promise of joy?
That is the core friction of the text, for sure. And it's exactly why the accompanying reflection in today's materials is so profound.
What does the reflection say?
It states, the Christian life is not the abolition of desire, but the baptism of desire.
The baptism of desire. Okay, break that down.
Well, toxic positivity, what you were just talking about, is the abolition of desire. It's pretending you don't hurt, pretending you don't desperately want the people you love to stay with you.
Yeah, just slapping a smile on it. Everything happens for a reason.
Exactly. Which is unhelpful and untrue to the human experience. But the baptism of desire is completely different. It acknowledges the ache. It completely acknowledges the desperate human longing for permanence.
But it does something else with it.
Right. It plunges that longing into a larger narrative of trust.
Unpack that in a practical sense, though. If I'm a graduate today staring at my packed car in the dorm parking lot, how is my desire being baptized?
Okay, think about it like this. When you're a child, your desires are entirely possessive.
Very mine.
Exactly. You want to hold on to the toy, the room, the friend, and never let them change. A baptized desire recognizes that everything you are trying to hold on to was a gift you didn't earn in the first place.
Oh, wow. That's a huge perspective shift.
It is. The reflection notes that the Christian asks for everything only when he has learned that everything is a gift.
Right.
So for the graduate, you stop clenching your fists around your college experience, demanding that it continue forever, and you open your hands, asking for the grace to carry what you've learned into the unknown.
So the prayer changes.
Yes, Christ is completely reframing prayer here, because we so often treat prayer in moments of transition like a slot machine.
Oh, absolutely. A spiritual vending machine.
Yes.
You put in a quick prayer, pull the lever, and hope it dispenses a high-paying entry-level job and a great apartment in a cool city.
Exactly. But when Christ says, ask, and you shall receive, He is completely destroying that vending machine model.
How so?
He is speaking as a son who fully trusts his father. It is a relational request, not a transactional one.
Okay.
The child asks boldly, not because they figured out the perfect combination of magic words, but because they know who they are speaking to. They are asking for the ultimate joy of the relationship itself, not just a favorable change in their immediate circumstances.
Which brings up the quote from G.K. Chesterton chosen for today's reflection.
Oh, this is a great quote.
It really is. Chesterton wrote, "Joy, which was the small publicity of the pagans, is the gigantic secret of the Christian." I really want to dig into that contrast.
It's very striking.
It is. What does he mean by the small publicity of the pagans?
He's talking about thin happiness.
Thin happiness.
Yeah, the kind of superficial, easily advertised pleasure that relies entirely on everything going perfectly well.
Like the Instagram version of a good life.
Exactly. It's the joy of a good harvest, a sunny day, or a full bank account. It is highly publicized. You want everyone to see it, but it's extremely fragile.
Because the second something goes wrong, it's over.
Right. If the weather turns or the market crashes, the joy vanishes. But the gigantic secret of the Christian is a joy that survives the absolute stripping away of those external comforts.
It's subterranean.
Yes. It's a joy that somehow persists even if you are standing at the end of a chapter, watching everything you know change and disappear.
Because it's rooted in humility.
Precisely.
And that connects brilliantly to the first reading for today's morning prayer, which features the story of Apollos.
Apollos is such a fascinating figure.
He really is. For those listening who might not remember, Apollos is this incredibly eloquent, highly educated, rock star speaker in the early church.
He's basically a theological celebrity of his day.
Exactly. But he only has part of the story. His theology is incomplete. So Priscilla and Aquila pull him aside to correct him.
Which is a very brave thing to do to a celebrity.
Right. And what stands out to me is how Apollos reacts. I mean, if you are a hotshot graduate today, or a recognized expert in your field, and someone pulls you aside to tell you that your foundational knowledge is incomplete.
Oh, that's usually a recipe for massive defensiveness.
Right, the ego violently rejects correction.
Because the proud person views any correction as a burial. If you tell me I'm wrong, you are killing my identity.
That is so true.
But the morning reflection points out that Apollos accepts this correction, not as a burial, but as a resurrection.
A resurrection of his intellect, kinda.
Yeah, he allows his previous incomplete understanding to be dismantled so that a truer, deeper understanding can be built in its place.
I see a massive analogy here for you listening regarding the very nature of graduation itself. Graduation is always framed as a celebration of what you know, but I think it's actually a massive systemic correction.
How do you mean?
Well, think about it. For 16 years, these students have lived inside a highly artificial structure.
The education system.
Yeah. There is a syllabus that tells you exactly what matters. There is a grading scale that tells you exactly what you are worth.
Right. An A means you're good, a C means you're average.
Exactly. There are predictable semesters. Graduation takes that entire scaffolding and just rips it away, pushing the individual into full adulthood.
It forces an incredible vulnerability.
It is the ultimate removal of the training wheels.
And that vulnerability really brings us back to the question of prayer and desire that we started with.
Right, knocking on the door.
Yes. When you stand on the threshold of that kind of transition, when the syllabus is gone and the structured world has vanished, you have to ask for guidance. You have to pray.
But the way you ask changes.
The psychological posture of that asking changes everything. Are you begging at the door of a hostile stranger, or are you knocking at the door of home?
Let's explore that. Because if you view the adult world as a hostile stranger, then graduation feels like an eviction notice.
You're being shoved out of the castle into the dark woods.
Exactly.
And if your education was purely transactional-like, if it was just about acquiring facts to trade for a salary, then yes, you are stepping out into a brutal competitive marketplace.
And God is just another manager you have to appease to get ahead.
Precisely. But if the education did its job, if it was actually about the shaping of the soul and the recognition of ultimate truths, then you realize that despite the brokenness of the modern world, it is upheld by a father.
So the asking becomes an act of profound trust.
Yes, you are knocking on the door of home because you have been trained to recognize the voice of the one who answers.
Wow. That theological reality of leaving a fiercely protected space and having to trust the nature of the departure, It calls to mind what I think is one of the most profound, emotionally devastating farewells in the history of literature.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
And it is a children's book. We are moving to our next source, the final chapter of A. Milne's The House at Pooh Corner.
Such a masterpiece.
It really is. The chapter is famously titled, "In which Christopher Robin and Pooh come to an enchanted place, and we leave them there."
Just the title alone is heartbreaking. And we leave them there.
Right. Now, if you haven't read this since you were 6 years old, you might just think it's a cute story about stuffed animals eating honey.
Which is how most people remember it.
But it is entirely about the ache of growing up.
It is a staggering piece of melancholic writing.
It really is.
And to understand the weight of it, you have to remember the context. A. Milne wrote these stories in the aftermath of World War I.
Oh, that's right.
He had seen the absolute destruction of innocence on a global scale. So the 100-acre wood isn't just a cute playground. It is a meticulously constructed sanctuary.
A safe place.
It is a place where nothing truly terrible can ever happen. And the final chapter opens with this pervasive, atmospheric sense of dread.
Yes. The dread with a capital D.
Milne writes that Christopher Robin was going away. But the tension is that no one quite knows why he is going, and nobody knows where he is going.
And what I find so brilliant and honestly so relatable to any office environment or family dynamic is how the animals react to this impending change.
They all lose their minds a little bit.
They do. They all feel that things were going to be different. And Rabbit, who is essentially the eternal middle manager of the forest.
The guy with the clipboard?
Exactly. Rabbit completely panics. He can't handle the emotional ambiguity, so what does he do? He calls a meeting to pass a resolution.
With terrible spelling, of course.
Oh, naturally. But he thinks that if he can just formalize the process, if he can just get everyone to sign a piece of paper, he can somehow bureaucratize the grief.
It is such a deeply human coping mechanism.
We do this all the time.
We really do.
Yeah.
When we are faced with a massive life change, we hyper-organize.
We obsess over the packing boxes.
Yes, we create elaborate itineraries. We focus on the logistics because looking directly at the emotional reality is just too painful. Rabbit wants a signed document because a document feels controllable.
It's an illusion of control. And then on the complete opposite end of the coping spectrum, you have Eeyore.
Ooh.
Eeyore. Eeyore is usually just the voice of pure, unadulterated cynicism.
The ultimate pessimist.
But he arrives at this awkward meeting and announces that he has written a poem.
Poem.
Yeah.
Right.
He wrote it in a quiet moment for Pooh. And he prefaces it by saying that hitherto, all the poetry in the forest has been written by Pooh, a bear with a pleasing manner but a positively startling lack of brain.
I love that line so much.
The humor in Milne's work is so dry, but it masks such deep affection. Eeyore, the grumpiest creature alive, trying to articulate his sorrow through verse.
It's surprisingly sweet.
It is. And when he finishes reading it, the animals politely clap, and Eeyore just sighs and notes that it is unexpected and gratifying, if a little lacking in smack.
It's hilarious, but it's also deeply touching. They are all trying in their own completely inadequate ways to be able to frame around a loss they lack the vocabulary to understand.
Right. They don't know how to say goodbye.
And when they finally take this messy, misspelled resolution to Christopher Robin, the moment is painfully awkward.
It falls totally flat.
Completely. Eeyore tries to present it, gets totally flustered, complains that there is no space in the forest, and just humps off.
And the others slowly edge away.
Exactly. The bureaucracy fails, the art fails, and it just leaves Christopher Robin and Pooh alone.
And this is where Milne drops one of the most profound philosophical dialogues about modern life I've ever read, completely disguised as a chat between a boy and a bear.
It really is a philosophical masterpiece.
Christopher Robin asks Pooh what he likes doing best in the world. And Pooh thinks about eating honey, but then realizes that the moment just before you begin to eat it is actually better than the eating itself.
Which, by the way, is a brilliant psychological insight into dopamine and the anticipation of pleasure.
That's exactly what it is. Anticipation is always sweeter. But then Pooh concludes that what he really likes best is just going to see Christopher Robin and Piglet being there and it being a hummy sort of day outside.
Just pure presence.
Exactly. But Christopher Robin's answer is what stops you in your tracks. He says what he likes doing best is nothing.
Nothing.
And his definition of nothing is absolutely vital for anyone living in the 21st century. He says, it's when people call out at you just as you're going off to do it. What are you going to do, Christopher Robin? And you say, oh, nothing. And then you go and do it.
We really need to unpack that.
Please do, because it's so contrary to how we live now.
Well, in our hyper-productive hustle culture society, Doing nothing is viewed as a moral failure.
Oh, 100%. It's viewed as laziness or wasted time. You have to be optimizing every second.
Right, but Christopher Robin's definition of doing nothing is the unhurried grace of contemplation.
It's intentional.
Exactly. It is a state of being where your time is not measured by its utility to anyone else. It is the freedom to follow a thought just to see where it goes, to listen to the wind, to simply exist without having to produce an outcome.
It's like what the philosopher Joseph Pieper called leisure, the basis of culture.
Yes, exactly.
But the heartbreak of the scene is that Christopher Robin realizes this era is over for him. He tells Pooh that he is not going to be allowed to do nothing anymore.
He knows it's ending.
Yeah, and Pooh asks if he means never again, and Christopher Robin replies, well, not so much. They don't let you.
They don't let you.
That line hurts.
It does, because that is the universal threshold of adulthood. The world of schedules, of responsibilities, of optimization, what Christopher Robin later calls factors. It intrudes.
It demands your time.
The enchanted spaces of our lives, whether that is the literal woods behind our childhood home or the intellectual sanctuary of a college campus, are places where doing nothing is protected.
Right.
But when you graduate, the world starts demanding that every hour be accounted for.
Right. And as they are having this realization, they walk to the highest point in the forest, a place called Galleon's Lap.
It's such a beautifully described setting.
Milne describes it perfectly. It's a circle of 60-something trees where the floor is close-set grass, quiet and smooth and green. You don't have to look for a specific place to sit down. The whole area is just welcoming.
And from there, you can see the whole world spread out until it reaches the sky.
It's the ultimate vantage point.
Yeah, it's the place where the entirety of their world can be held in a single, comprehensive view. It represents the absolute pinnacle of their shared experience before the descent into the unknown.
But here's the crucial detail. Milne explicitly tells us that what makes Galleon's Lap enchanted is that nobody has ever been able to count the exact number of trees.
Right. The number keeps changing.
Yes. Sometimes it feels like 63, sometimes 64. Even if you tie a piece of string around each tree as you count it, the number remains elusive.
It resists measurement.
Exactly. The exact dimensions of the place fundamentally resist being captured by data or administration. Now think about that as an analogy for human memory. Think about a university campus.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right.
Because when you try to look back on a deeply formative period of your life, you can never perfectly quantify it. You can't put a string around every meaningful moment.
Exactly. You can't look at a spreadsheet and say, I experienced exactly 42 moments of profound philosophical clarity, and I laughed with my roommate exactly 412 times.
It would ruin it if you could.
It would. You can never perfectly map the exact shift in your own soul. The memory remains enchanted precisely because it refuses to be reduced to a historical record. It is a landscape you carry, not an archive you consult.
As beautifully said. And while sitting in that unquantifiable landscape, Christopher Robin tries to explain the real world to Pooh.
He tries to prepare him.
Right. He starts talking about kings and queens and factors and how you make a suction pump and what comes from Brazil.
It's just this jumbled, overwhelming list of adult education and commerce.
These are the things that are pulling him out of the forest. And Pooh, who represents pure, uncomplicated presence, just leans against a tree, folds his paws, and says, "Oh." And I didn't know, quietly wishing he had a real brain.
It breaks your heart because he feels inadequate. But then Pooh shifts the entire emotional register of the conversation.
It changes the subject.
Yeah, he asks if it is a very grand thing to be a knight on a horse. He wonders if it is grander than kings and factors.
Because knights represent loyalty, not industry.
Exactly. And Christopher Robin realizes that Pooh wants to be a knight. So he takes a stick, touches Pooh on the shoulder, and says, "Rise, Sir Pooh de Bear, most faithful of all my knights."
It's such a tender moment.
It really is. And I want to know why you think that specific act of knighting a stuffed bear is so devastatingly sad.
Because of what it represents. Christopher Robin is being pulled into a modern industrial world that values suction pumps and factors. Things that are useful, things that generate capital.
The functional things.
Exactly. But before he goes, he pauses to consecrate the loyalty of a bear. He elevates simple, seemingly useless devotion to the highest level of chivalry.
He's saying, this is what actually matters.
He is making a massive statement about what actually matters. But the tragedy is that Pooh, knowing he has a very little brain, immediately begins to panic internally.
Oh, because he thinks she won't be able to keep up.
Right. He thinks about all the complicated things Christopher Robin is going to learn, and he worries he won't be able to understand them when Christopher Robin comes back. Pooh wonders if being a faithful knight means that you just went on being faithful without being told things.
Okay, stop right there. That you just went on being faithful without being told things.
I struggle with this concept a bit.
Why is that? Well, in a modern context, if you are faithful to a company or an institution without demanding transparency, without being told things, you're a fool. You get taken advantage of.
That's certainly how the modern world operates, yeah.
So is Milne romanticizing blind obedience? Or is there a deeper theology of faith at play here?
It is definitely the latter. Milne is not talking about corporate loyalty. He is talking about the fundamental nature of love and faith in the face of intellectual disparity.
Oh, okay.
When Pooh worries about not understanding Christopher Robin's new knowledge, he is touching on the exact same anxiety a parent feels when their child goes off to a university and comes back speaking a completely different academic language.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The anxiety is, will you still love me when I can't understand your world?
That is so true.
And Pooh's conclusion going on, being faithful without being told things, is the realization that true fidelity is rooted in the relationship itself, not in comprehensive understanding.
It's relational, not intellectual.
Exactly. It is the exact same dynamic required of the disciples in the gospel we read earlier. They don't understand the theology of the resurrection yet. They don't understand the mechanics of the departure. They just have to trust the person of Christ.
That makes perfect sense. And it sets up the final, gut-wrenching promise Christopher Robin extracts from Pooh.
The promise not to forget.
Yeah. Christopher Robin asks Pooh to promise that he won't forget about him, ever, not even when he is 100. Pooh does the math in his head, realizes he will be 99, and promises.
That's so sweet.
But it doesn't stop there. Christopher Robin looks out at the world, reaches out, feels for Pooh's paw, and pleads, "Pooh, whatever happens, you will understand, won't you?" And Pooh asks, "Understand what?"
And Christopher Robin just laughs, says, "Oh, nothing," and jumps to his feet.
It kills me every time. He cannot articulate the grief of the separation. He is terrified that the adult world is going to change him, that he is going to become obsessed with suction pumps and factors and lose his soul.
He's asking for preemptive forgiveness.
Exactly. He is desperately asking his truest, most innocent friend to forgive him in advance for growing up. He wants unconditional understanding for the compromises he is inevitably going to make.
It is a devastating passage. And its power only amplifies when you place it in front of people who are currently standing on the threshold of adulthood.
Which brings us to our next source.
Right. And this is one of my absolute favorite traditions in higher education.
Yeah. Tell us about Father Griffin.
So for many years at the University of Notre Dame, there was a priest named Father Robert Griffin. He was a legendary figure on campus.
Very beloved.
Incredibly beloved. And during commencement weekend, he would gather the graduating seniors, and he would read this exact chapter of the house at Pooh Corner to them.
Let's really think about the optics of that for a second. You have an audience of 22-year-olds.
Right.
These are people who have just survived organic chemistry, who are celebrating a rigorous academic achievement, who are preparing to enter law schools, medical programs, Wall Street.
They're ready to conquer the world.
Exactly. And a priest stands up and reads them a children's story about a boy talking to a stuffed bear. On paper, it sounds absurd.
It does.
Why does it work? Why does this routinely reduce a room full of ambitious young adults to absolute silence and tears?
Because the 22-year-olds know exactly who they are in this story.
They realize they're Christopher Robin.
They do. They know that Milne isn't just writing about a bear. He is writing about the relentless, unforgiving forward motion of time.
That time comes for everyone.
Exactly. He is writing about the sacredness of ordinary friendship. The kind of friendship built on doing nothing together in a dorm room at 2 in the morning.
Eating pizza and just talking about life.
Right. When you are packing your boxes and looking at the people you have lived with for 4 years, you realize that the enchanted forest is closing. The protective bubble of the university is popping.
The real world is starting.
You are Christopher Robin. The world of factors is demanding your presence. And you are terrified that you are going to forget the magic of Galleon's lap. Father Griffin read it because it bypassed their intellectual defenses.
Oh, that's smart.
If he had given a lecture on the psychology of transition, they would have taken notes. But by reading a fairy tale, he broke their hearts wide open so they could actually feel the weight of what they were leaving.
That brings us to a massive distinction I want to explore for you listening today. There is a deep connection between how we remember our past and how we approach our vocation.
Definitely.
We talked earlier about Catholic education, but this applies to any deeply formative experience. A true education is not merely about credentialing.
It's not just a transaction.
No, it is not just an exchange of tuition for a piece of paper that proves you understand suction pumps or supply chain logistics. It is about formation.
Right.
It is about taking the raw material of a young person and instilling a fidelity to truth, beauty, and goodness. It is, to borrow from Milne, about making knights.
I think making knights is the most accurate way to describe the goal of formation.
It really is. Look at the difference. A credential tells the world what a person is legally permitted to do. It says, you can practice law, or you can build a bridge.
It's about skill.
But formation dictates what a person is morally compelled to do. When Christopher Robin knights Pooh, he is giving him an identity that transcends his lack of intellectual capability.
He is giving him a vocation of faithfulness.
And that is what a true education does. It says to the student, you are going into a world that will judge you entirely by your utility, your wealth, and your status. But we are sending you out as a knight.
Your duty is different.
Right. Your primary duty is to remain faithful to the virtues you have encountered in this enchanted space, even when the world tells you those virtues are useless. Actually, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
A university campus, in its purest sense, is an enchanted forest. It is heavily subsidized. It is slightly removed from the brutal demands of the marketplace, and it is a place where you can sit on the grass and debate the nature of the good life without worrying about a mortgage.
Right. It's an artificial environment in many ways.
Exactly. Leaving it means entering a world where those conversations are incredibly hard to find. Doesn't the modern world just crush knights? Doesn't the world of suction pumps eventually win out?
It definitely tries to.
So how does a 22-year-old carry the forest with them when they are forced to walk through the concrete city?
They carry it through the deliberate, almost defiant practice of remembering.
Remembering as a practice.
Yes. This is why tradition and memory are not just sentimental fluff. They are survival tools.
Yeah.
You have to intentionally revisit Galleon's lap in your mind.
You have to cultivate that memory.
You have to actively recall the voices that spoke truth to you when the world is lying to you. That is why Father Griffin reading that story mattered so much. He was giving those students a vocabulary for their nostalgia.
So they didn't just feel sad, they understood why they were sad.
Exactly. He was showing them that mourning the passing of a beautiful season is not a sign of weakness. The mourning itself is a testament to the value of what was experienced.
That's profound.
The old stories, the old radio voices, the old memories, they serve as an anchor because they remind us that the things we loved were real. If the world feels like a concrete city, the memory of the forest is the only thing that will remind you to plant trees.
The memory of the forest reminds you to plant trees?
I love that. And that delicate, agonizing balance between mourning a passing season and stepping boldly into the next one brings us to the final piece of our deep dives today.
A very different kind of source.
Very different.
Yeah.
We are moving from the quiet, idyllic woods of Edwardian childhood to a much more sophisticated but equally melancholic reflection on early adulthood. We're turning to a modern classic, Billy Joel's song, I've Loved These Days.
It is a brilliant pivot.
It's such a great song. Because, while Milne captured the innocence of childhood transitions, Billy Joel captures the complicated, slightly jaded transitions of our 20s and 30s.
It's a much more adult kind of grief.
Right. It is a remarkable piece of songwriting, precisely because it maps out a very specific, almost contradictory emotional landscape.
It does. Let's look at the lyrics. They paint a picture of a life that is entirely unmoored from heavy consequence, at least temporarily.
Very insulated.
Yeah. He sings, now we take our time, so nonchalant, and spend our nights so bon vivant. We dress our days in silken robes. The money comes, the money goes.
It sounds incredibly luxurious.
It does, but I have to challenge this framing a bit. Drinking Cabernet in silken robes and blowing money nonchalantly doesn't sound like a profound transitional state.
What does it sound like to you?
It sounds like arrogant indulgence. It sounds like privileged escapism. Why should we view this as a healthy or meaningful emotional state to analyze?
Well, you are completely right to challenge it, because on the surface, it is indulgence.
Okay, glad we agree there.
It is a description of an era where the immediate pleasures of late nights and philosophical conversations over wine take precedence over actual responsibility.
It's the college experience for a lot of people.
Exactly. But what elevates the song from being a simple catalog of decadence is the crushing self-awareness of the narrator.
Ah, he knows what he's doing.
Yes, he isn't deluded by the silken robes. He sings, "We know it's all a passing phase."
Right.
He actively acknowledges the physical and spiritual toll of this insulated life. He says, "We're going wrong, we're gaining weight, we're sleeping long and far too late." He knows this lifestyle is an unsustainable fiction.
He even explicitly recognizes the escapism you just mentioned. He sings, "Now as we indulge in things refined, we hide our hearts from harder times."
Yes, that's the key line.
He knows they're using the caviar and the Cabernet as a shield against the real world. He even questions his own participation in the charade. "I don't know why I even care. We'll get so high and get nowhere."
There's a deep, almost cynical acknowledgement that they will eventually have to change their jaded ways.
But then comes the chorus.
Right. Despite all of that self-awareness, despite naming every flaw and acknowledging the fleeting nature of the moment, the chorus lands with incredible grace.
He simply says, "But I've loved these days."
And that is the absolute genius of the song. It is gratitude entirely divorced from regret.
That's a hard balance to strike.
It is. He doesn't say, "I wish I had studied more," or "I wish I had been more productive."
Right, there's no guilt.
But he also doesn't say, "I want to stay in this phase forever and avoid growing up." He perfectly holds the tension. He accepts that the phase must end. He accepts the profound flaws of the phase, but he insists on loving it for what it was.
It is the psychological mastery of cognitive dissonance. You can recognize that a period of your life was messy, indulgent, and temporary, and still be profoundly grateful for it.
Exactly. And then he offers that toast. So before we end, and then begin, we'll drink a toast how it's been.
Before we end and then begin.
It's perfect phrasing.
That phrase alone could serve as the motto for commencement day. It acknowledges the finality of the ending, but immediately grammatically links it to the necessity of the beginning. You can't begin until you definitively end.
You have to close the door to open the next one.
Right. He sings "A few more hours to be complete." I want you, the listener, to picture the seniors sitting in the Nolan Gymnasium at Benedictine today. They are living inside those exact few more hours.
The clock is literally ticking.
The academic robes they are wearing are their silken robes. They are surrounded by the people they have spent their late nights with, the people they have hidden their hearts from harder times with, and they are acutely, painfully aware that by this afternoon, the phase will be over.
It requires a tremendous amount of emotional maturity to look at a passing phase with affection, rather than a desperate desire to regress.
It really does.
We talked earlier about the line between gratitude and melancholy. Melancholy, in its unhealthy, paralyzing form, tries to freeze time. It tries to stay in the enchanted forest forever.
It refuses the transition.
It refuses the correction of Apollos we talked about earlier. But true gratitude looks backward with love, raises the glass to how it has been, and then turns around and walks out of the forest.
It loves the passing phase completely without letting that love prevent the next chapter from beginning.
Exactly.
The willingness to let the phase pass, to let the song end, to let the book close, that is the final exam of any great education or life experience.
The final exam, I like that.
If you cannot leave the campus has failed you. The whole point of the gathering is the scattering. You don't build a ship to keep it in the harbor.
And yet, as the morning moves on here, as the heat begins to rise in Atchison, the reality of that scattering is about to become intensely physical.
Very tangible.
Yes. In just a few hours, the commencement ceremony will end. The families will disperse across the green lawns for photographs. And then the slow, quiet, inevitable dismantling of the year begins.
Trunks will be packed.
Posters will be pulled down from dormitory walls, leaving those little sticky marks behind.
The cars will be loaded. By tonight, the lights will go out in the residence halls. The campus, which has been vibrating with the chaotic energy of thousands of students for 9 months, will suddenly become incredibly still.
It's such a stark contrast.
It is. The quiet heat of the summer will begin to settle along the Missouri River. The wind will blow through the trees on the Raven Walk, and there will be no one there to walk beneath them.
It is an eerie feeling, walking through a liminal space that has just been emptied out.
But there is also a strange, beautiful comfort in realizing that the physical space remains, holding the invisible echoes of everything that happened there.
The space remains, yes, but more importantly, the people we knew in those spaces remain with us, long after the physical departure.
Right.
The conversations, the difficult corrections we finally accepted, the moments of unearned grace, the inside jokes, they become part of the literal architecture of our own minds. We don't leave them behind in the empty dorm room. We absorb them.
They become the foundation we stand on when we face the harder times.
They absolutely do.
Which brings us back to the final image of Milne's masterpiece. I want you to really sit with this image as you navigate the transitions in your own life, whether you're graduating, changing careers, moving cities, or just letting go of a past version of yourself.
It's a universal feeling.
It is. Milne closes the book by writing, but wherever they go and whatever happens to them on the way, in that enchanted place on the top of the forest, a little boy and his bear will always be playing.
It is the ultimate promise of permanence in a world entirely governed by change.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over something that bridges the gap between the pain of leaving and the promise of that permanence.
That's the thought.
In Japanese culture, there is a profound aesthetic and psychological concept known as mono no aware. It translates roughly to the pathos of things, or the beautiful sadness of impermanence.
Mono no aware. It's the feeling you get when you look at cherry blossoms, right?
Exactly. Cherry blossoms are beautiful precisely because they only last for a week before the wind blows them away. If they were made of plastic and lasted forever, we wouldn't care about them.
We'd just walk right past them.
We would. Mono no aware teaches that the temporary nature of our experiences is not a bug in the system. It is the very feature that creates meaning.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
The sadness you feel when packing up a dorm room or leaving a beloved job or watching a child grow out of a phase is not something to be cured or avoided. It is the ultimate proof that you were awake to the beauty of the moment.
You felt it.
You felt it. We so often want to turn our enchanted forests into plastic, permanent museums. But the true grace is letting the wind blow the blossoms away, knowing that the capacity to love the temporary things is what actually makes us eternal.
That's incredible.
The truest things we experience, a resilient faith, a deep and ordinary friendship, the pure joy of learning, they do not actually end. We are forced to leave the enchanted place behind. We are forced to enter the world of factors and suction pumps.
But by some quiet miracle of grace, we are permitted to carry the top of the forest with us forever.
We carry it until the journey is complete and we finally knock at the door of home.
Beautifully said.
As the morning opens fully now over Benedictine College and the distant church bells ring out across the breezy Kansas sky, we wish the graduates and all of you listening a day of profound gratitude and unshakable joy. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, may you walk forward with courage, carrying the light of the places you have loved.